The way that the roundtable will work today is we're very fortunate to have 3 groups presenting, and we will start with one group. They'll present for 15 minutes. We'll move to the next, and then finally to the third for our 45-minute session. I'm going to turn it over to Jen Reichenberg, who is representing us from Buffalo State, and she'll begin with the first 15 minutes.
Hey, hi everybody. Can you give me just a thumbs up if you can hear me? And if you can see my slides. Yes, okay, great. Let me just get it. Okay, there we go. Well, so I signed up for a roundtable with my co-presenters because we are just in the very early stages of this research. And we're looking at mentoring and co-teaching in pre-student teaching field placements. I'm really excited that my co-presenters who contributed to this presentation were able to be involved with this project. Unfortunately, they can't be with us today, but they are Tara Flanagan, Michelle Heater, and Jonathan Nguyen, all teachers at South Buffalo Charter School. So the rationale for this project is that the number of teacher candidates that we were placing in the school necessitated placing 2 candidates with 1 mentor in their pre-student teaching field placement. So the feedback, it turned out, was extremely positive from this placement. And we also noticed that there were different dynamics in different classrooms in terms of the level of involvement of teacher candidates. So this led us to ask these research questions. What are the constraints and opportunities associated with 1 versus 2 teacher candidates when they're paired with 1 mentor teacher, specifically in pre-student teaching field placements? And how do 1 versus 2 teacher candidates support a co-teaching model for field placements, which is what Buffalo State uses for our student teaching model? So you're probably familiar with co-teaching from the field of special education. A little more recently, we're looking at co-teaching as a student teaching model in which we have those 2 teachers, which would be the cooperating teacher and the teacher candidate, working together with groups of teachers. But what this study does is expands it to co-teaching in pre-student teaching methods courses, and more specifically looking at the placement of 2 teacher candidates together and how that can support the model. So in this study, we have 3 mentor teachers as participants and 4 teacher candidates. We were in an urban charter school, and it took place over 1 semester in a pre-student teaching ELA methods course. We used a qualitative design and survey data as well as interview data. Just super briefly, there are multiple theories at work in co-teaching, and you can probably think of some others, but specifically the ones that I'm drawing upon include situated learning, the importance of dialogue in the learning process, and the paramount importance of reflection, especially co-reflection. And more recently, coming to my attention is the work of Nell Noddings and care ethics and how that is actively enacted in a co-teaching model. So I'm just going to very quickly touch on previous research upon which this research is built. And we are familiar with many benefits for students from a co-teaching model for student teaching. And these are self-reported benefits from students. We also see impact on ELA test scores. You can see on the left-hand side, co-taught student teaching test scores exceeding the other 2 categories, including 1 experienced teacher. And those benefits held for math as well as subgroups such as English learners and students receiving special education services. Teacher candidates report many benefits when they're in a co-taught student teaching placement. Mentor teachers report that they feel it's beneficial to them as well because they're learning from and alongside their student teachers. So let's turn our attention to the present study. So these are the major themes that came out of the preliminary data from the surveys and the interviews. The candidates and the mentors overwhelmingly reported an increased amount of collaboration using this approach to having two teacher candidates with the one mentor. They also reported more small group work for children. And of course, this took place during the last semester, so last spring, when we still had a lot of hybrid instruction going on. So some students were in the classroom, many of them were in the classroom, and some were still at home and learning simultaneously with the children in the classroom. So it was really beneficial to have all of these teachers working together. Also, a really interesting finding the mentors and the teacher candidates highlighted was the ability to clear up any confusion for candidates. When you're in a new setting, a new school, taking a class together, it's really beneficial to have somebody there by your side that's going through the same experience and less burnout for candidates. So just here are a few quotes that I pulled from the data from teacher candidates who talked about the collaboration. They enjoyed being able to check and see if others were experiencing the same events in the same way. Sometimes people process things in different ways, and that can be really beneficial. They love the idea of having a peer to bounce ideas off of. Mentors said they saw the teacher candidates learning to work together and lean on one another. They would read one another's lessons before handing them to the mentor. And they highlighted that they noticed teacher candidates talking about the students and saying things like, I can't believe this one did this. So just sharing in that joy of discovery and also just kind of trying to understand the students. So Michelle Heater, one of my co-presenters, put together this slide. From her perspective, these are some of the many benefits that she sees in terms of collaboration. And I just want to highlight that she pulled out moral support in stressful situations, which we know are really day in and day out part of our teaching at this point in time, and also drawing on one another's strengths. Jonathan Nguyen, another co-presenter, really felt that it was important to highlight less burnout for teacher candidates when they are placed in a paired situation. They would sort of tag team teach in his classroom, where one teacher candidate would take the lead on a lesson, and then the other teacher candidate would assist, and then they sort of switch roles on the next lesson. He said it's really nice to know that when you need to step back and take a breath, you have somebody there to pick up and support you. The mentors did identify a couple of disadvantages as well to hosting two teacher candidates. One mentioned that at first it can seem overwhelming. However, by the end, most saw that this disadvantage was well outweighed by the advantages. And they also mentioned less individual attention for the individual teacher candidates, but they reiterated yet again that the advantages outweighed this. And so then we look at this in terms of a holistic co-teaching approach. So in terms of co-planning, the mentors said that the teacher candidates would kind of listen into conversations and chime in when they felt comfortable contributing. So it was kind of a safe way for them to engage in that co-planning. They said in math in particular, scaffolding was really important in lessons. So one teacher candidate's lesson built on the next one. Once again, Michelle Heater said it's important to have the big picture in mind when the candidates are planning together, to split up responsibilities and to learn from one another. In terms of co-teaching, you're probably familiar with these approaches to co-teaching from the co-teaching literature. And these are the three that were self-reported by candidates and their mentors. This was with no introduction to what the expectations were in terms of how they interacted in the classroom. So one teach, one assist was common, parallel teaching was common, as well as supplemental teaching. Jonathan Nguyen said in particular, one teach, one assist was really powerful because there were so many sometimes management issues, technology issues. He found this one particularly useful with his candidates. Flanagan said parallel teaching was really important in her classroom, especially in terms of data collection, as well as supplemental teaching to allow for more individualized approaches. So she really utilized her teacher candidates well to engage in this type of teaching. These are the three co-teaching approaches that were not reported. team teaching, differentiated teaching, and station teaching. And then in terms of co-assessment, I asked how often did you and your mentor analyze student work together? And you can see the results there. 50% said sometimes, 25% rarely, and then often. And Tara Flanagan pointed out that co-assessment, to her, it was really important to be able to actually divide the children up and to assess more efficiently in that manner. And then finally, co-reflection. The two teacher candidates and mentor would meet together every day. And they felt that that was really a beneficial process because of the dialogue that ensued. So Tara shared some thoughts here about the importance of different points of view and non-judgmental conversations. So finally, in terms of future implications, so this semester, I have done some instruction with my students and then orientation with the mentor teachers regarding co-teaching approaches, and implemented some of these scaffolds, such as some co-teaching exercises. There's some conversations the co-teachers will have with the teacher candidates will have with their mentors, a co-planning guide. I created a focused feedback guide so that they can engage in one teach, one observe, a co-assessment guide. And then I think I'm really excited about the co-reflection guide so that they can really engage in some structured reflection together after co-taught lessons. So later on when we have conversation, I'll be really interested if anyone has some additional suggestions. The school is thinking about doing a book club potentially to explore co-teaching in a more systematic fashion. So if you have any suggestions there as well. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jen. We appreciate your presentation. We're ready to move now to our colleagues at Binghamton.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. My name is Naorah Rimkunas, and I direct the Netter Center University Assisted Community School Regional Training Center that is hosted for the next 2 years. We've had it for a year at Binghamton University Community Schools. I'm joined today by Dr. Liz Anderson, who is Associate Professor in our Teaching, Learning, and Educational Leadership program, and also directs the NYSED Central and Western Community Schools Technical Assistance Center. We also have Andrea Decker, who directs our Clinical Education and Partnerships in the Department of Teaching, Learning, and Educational Leadership at Binghamton University, and then Luann Kida directs our NYSED Cares for Communities Technical Assistance Center. Next slide, please, Luann. So I just wanted to introduce this idea of community schools, which many of you are probably aware of, but it's this idea that a community school is both a place and a set of partnerships between the school and other community resources. And these schools are used as hubs. Community schools bring educators, families, and community partners together to offer a range of opportunities, supports, and services to children's families and the community. And we are engaging in a related but slightly different approach, and that is the university assisted community school model. And that is where higher ed really sees themselves as an anchor institution. That is how Binghamton University views ourselves in the community and the Binghamton community and beyond. With a responsibility and commitment to increase equity and inclusion by playing an active role in the community as a partner and contributor. And we see these types of relationships as mutually beneficial partnerships where both the community and the institutions improve together. And we do this work through our engagement in schools, through our community schools. And we do this in multiple ways, and my partners in this presentation will explain this as we move through this. But one is that we are anchored in the College of Community and Public Affairs, and so we are able to place interns through our Department of Social Work, our Department of Teaching, Learning, and Educational Leadership. We place interns and volunteers throughout our partnerships in our community schools. We also do this through engagement with our Center for Civic Engagement. We have a strong partnership with them. And we also lead a regional network of participating schools and their community school coordinators who engage regularly, weekly throughout the school year in professional development activities, in support activities that really help to build capacity for the work that they do in our community schools. And then we also have our technical assistance centers, such as the one that I lead, and then through NYSED. And these offer institutional, district level, and school level support, as well as family and student engagement and faculty engagement opportunities and capacity building. And we work across the state, we work nationally, we lead higher education engagement activities through a community of practice throughout New Jersey and New York, also the central and western region. So lots of participation with other institutions and other organizations. And then just to touch on what really characterizes a university-assisted community school approach are these integrated student supports, expanded and enriched learning time and opportunities both in and outside of the classroom, active family and community engagement. That's not just family and community contact, but true engagement, collaborative leadership and practices that involves school leaders, our leaders within Bucks, and then also our families and students, and then community-based teaching and learning that reflects the community and reflects the needs of the community. And with that, I'll hand it over to Luann.
Thank you, Naorah. So I'm Luann Kida, and my project is actually working with community and faith-based organizations, helping them to connect to schools and really build community through this community schools approach. The work that what you see here is a result of our partnership with our Center for Civic Engagement. Every semester, they work really closely with our team and have coordinators in the schools that we serve locally here in Broome County. And the schools identify the needs of where they need support, and they recruit students to go out into the school and support different things like around recess support and lunchtime support, social emotional learning. They go into classrooms, there's tutoring that happens. We do family engagement initiatives. So this just gives you a sense of the students pre-pandemic. We were placing somewhere between 400 and 500 students a year. Most of these are undergrad students who are exploring education. They like the idea of working with children. Some of them are in our education minor. Some of them are just thinking about they're in like a psychology major. We've had some that come from even things in our School of Management where they want to know how they can help support education and support students and families. And then we track the number of hours that they serve and the number of youth that they serve. So pre-pandemic, you can see the numbers was 456, and we served over 6,000 students through this approach. Even in the middle of a pandemic, when everything was shut down, we did a lot of remote, we did a lot of intentional outreach, and we still were able to place 229 students, and they served 3,000 students. So our schools really have been great partners to us. And Andrea is going to go through. These are just students who really are not formally attached to any kind of teaching, learning, or education. Many of them are social workers or they are undergrads kind of figuring out what they want to do. So it's been a really great and I will tell you that I was here when we started this. Our first semester we did this, we had 45 students. So that tells you the growth of that our students really want this experience. Andrea, I'll move it over to you.
Thanks. Just to build off Luann's numbers, we decided to also show how much specifically within TLEL. So that's within the Teaching, Learning, and Educational Leadership Department. So these are all of your teacher preparation students. And so I am an office of one, and I do over 300 placements a year, but this chart reflects our 232 placements. Field visits at the bottom are labeled as FV and internships are INT. And so these are some of our programs, but look at the hours that are served. We have to remember that our students are, well, whatever position they're in, volunteering at that school and serving a role. You know, they are a value added asset, and we have to tell that story continuously over, again, to our district partners. I'm just so proud of this. This is, you know, pre-pandemic, but I have to say with Luann too, our students continue to still provide tutoring opportunities as part of their field work, and many of them substitute taught. And so that's kind of our next slide to talk about this SWAP program that we have to discuss, you know, back to what Naorah said about mutually beneficial partnerships. Our SWAP program came out of the need, like many of your school district and partners, of lack of substitute teachers. We are a grad program, so our students do have bachelor's degrees going into their initial certification. And so they do have time within their day to substitute teach. So we got together with a group of local school districts, our BOCES, and designed this program. I'm going to start with 4. We started with 4 students, and it has grown to over 46 students, and also has morphed recently into an apprenticeship program. But let's go back a little bit and talk about, you know, SWAP. Our teacher candidates are guaranteed to substitute teach, guaranteed to get pay 2 days a week. And in response, the school district gives me a placement for them in a certified teacher's classroom who is tenured, who is ready to provide that fieldwork experience. Sometimes, you know, you're always asking for these placements and, you know, do you have a teacher to do this? It's nice to have the district be like, I'm going to look for that teacher for you because I want that student to have a positive experience. So our substitute, our candidate, we call them SWAP candidates, they work now 3 days in a school as opposed to previously 35 hours for that first semester and 100 the second. So now we're looking at increasing our exposure to our students. They become part of a culture within that school. They're able to get multiple experiences that they would have never received if they were just in that 1 day a week field work within their content area. We do try to keep them within their grade band, so they're not really subbing at the elementary school if they're a secondary student, and vice versa. They do sub outside of their certification area, like, you know, now we have English students subbing in science. But in order to prepare them for that experience, we partnered with the local BOCES, and we do professional development for all of our substitute teachers in this program. So they do an orientation and 2 workshops throughout the year. And we identify specific needs, like what do you do if you don't have a lesson plan, behavior analysis, de-escalation, many other important topics that one would expect, not only for a teacher candidate, but also a sub walking in. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. How the district views this is that they also receive reimbursement through a COSER. So they're able to put money into a fund, pay for the sub, and they get reimbursed at a state aid rate. So they love the program. Our students have said they love the program. And actually cooperating teachers have started to say like, oh, I really wish, and they start like hoarding our subs and say, and saying, I really want to work with this student. And now what's happening is that the students in the classroom are getting a experience that it's much more aligned because our student is the fieldwork student and subbing 2 days a week. So they're able to see that continuity of learning. It's been a wonderful program, and I'm happy to always talk about SWAP at length, but I'm going to pass it over to Liz.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. I'm going to sort of wrap up our portion of the presentation today by just touching a little bit on faculty engagement. Hopefully you're getting a sense that this university-assisted community schools approach, being mutually beneficial, does connect with research and scholarship, of course, teaching and service as well. And so we think about research, we think about our scholarship, but also know, and Luann and I are, and Naorah and Andrea as well, but that sort of integration of how we support our students, how we connect with our state organizations, that's all part of this engagement as well. So these are just a few examples of some of the projects that are happening. I think what I really want to just highlight is, first of all, the interdisciplinary nature of many of these projects, the cross-departmental nature of some of the work that's happening. And again, these are just a few examples of what we consider to be some of these community-based applied research projects. And so I think what I really want to highlight is, first of all, if any of these look interesting to you and there are others, reach out to us and we will connect you directly with these researchers to talk about their various projects. But I think, they really encompass, not just education, but mental health and a variety of areas. And we really look to engage all stakeholders in our faculty projects. And so we look to co-create everything from the research question with community partners, with our students. Many of our students are engaged in this research, not just conducting it, but as participants. And so we want to be hearing from our community and from our students, how has this experience in this project been beneficial to you in your pre-professional preparation, and what can we learn from? So co-creating research, the question, looking at developing research designs all the way to data collection and analysis. And so I think that, this is the fun thing that at least I get up to do every day, because it really looks at how can we be responsive as a university-assisted community schools approach? How can we engage across departments? And how do we continue to keep innovating? And as you all know, Binghamton is a research university, and this has led to quite a very successful sort of track record with grants and also publication. But most importantly, we're hearing from our students and from our community that they are being served well through our university-assisted community schools approach. So I'll stop there because I think we're out of time, but like everyone else, happy to elaborate more later.
Thank you so much. We're ready now to move to Shannon.
Okay, can I get screen sharing privileges?
You should be able to, but I'll make you
Okay.
co-host just in case.
Oh, I do.
You do,
I'm good.
okay.
Okay, so I'm Shannon Budin. I'm faculty member in exceptional education, which is our special ed program. But my role today, why I would like to share with you for a few minutes is my other role, which is that of accreditation coordinator person. So what I know we have some teacher candidates here as well, but essentially all of our teacher education programs at Buffalo State have to be accredited by the national organization called CAPE, which accredits educator preparation programs. And there's some rules and regulations and expectations and standards. And so one of the things that we do, we would probably do it anyway, but one of the things that we do is we evaluate both our student teachers, so at the end of their program, but also using a similar evaluation tool, we evaluate student teacher, or I should say JPs or junior participants or early candidates in like a methods course or like a pre-student teaching type of setting. So we do that 2 times in the career of a candidate. And so today what I wanted to do was just briefly get a little bit of feedback from people who we would view as stakeholders. So, faculty, partners, teacher candidates, and we have some awesome guests from Binghamton as well. So, maybe we'll get some tips and ideas from you all as well, because I'm sure I think you guys are AQUIP versus CAPE, but I'm sure there's lots of assessment going on. So we want to make our assessment process as successful as possible, because the only reason we do it is so that we can offer a better program. So we want to make sure that, our programming our teaching as faculty, the experiences that students are getting out in the field, all of those are excellent and quality, and that we're meeting the needs of all stakeholders. So teacher candidates, you're learning what you need to learn in order to be a successful teacher, and that we're putting out good teachers as well. So this is our assessment system, which looks really technical and probably more than we need to know about for today, but essentially just the two things I wanted to point out was that we get assessment data from lots of sources, and teacher candidates, your performance in the field is one place we get that data, and we rely on our school partners in order to give us that data. And so we want to make sure that you may have seen this RISE logo at Buffalo State, and it essentially talks about, we believe that we want to prepare reflective, innovative, student-centered educators. And then how do we know if we do that or not is through this assessment process. Well, it's one way. There's lots of ways, but that's one way. So we call it the Practicum Evaluation, which essentially is our student teaching eval. But like I said, we also do it early pre-student teaching as well. And it's just a rubric with four criteria. So, a student teacher would never demonstrate that skill. Maybe they occasionally do. It's approaching expectations. A 3 would be like, oh, they're meeting the expectations and they do it often, all the way up through exceeding expectations. And so we administer it during student teaching. It's completed by the mentor teacher. And then if it's in pre-student teaching, it's administered by the faculty member, but then a college supervisor does it too. So it's kind of cool. We can triangulate. We can see, well, what is the mentor teacher seeing? What is a supervisor seeing? And then see if they match and they align. And so how do we come up with the items on this assessment? And so we base it on in-task standards, which are essentially standards, national standards that focus on teacher preparation. So what should teachers, no matter the field, so whether you're social studies teacher, an English teacher, a special ed teacher, an elementary teacher, they say, in general, these are the categories. You should be able to speak to the learner in learning. You should have that good content knowledge in your field. You should demonstrate good instructional practice, which would include assessment, differentiated instruction, probably collaboration and co-teaching, professional responsibility. That's really where collaboration would come in. So thinking about like professional dispositions as well. So those are the big areas, but we also feel that it's really important to focus on technology. So, selecting appropriate technology for instruction, using instructional technology to allow your students to show and express what they know, or for you to deliver the instruction. And obviously in the last year and a half, we've really seen the importance of that. So, and then the other area that we have some items on our assessment focus on, I guess I would say like cultural competence with how you engage and interact with diverse learners and their families. So those are the big areas that we assess. There's about 29 items on this assessment that really target those areas. And so we do allow programs also to develop their own unique items. So for example, in science, they might want to have something special about like safety, lab safety, or in special ed, we maybe have unique assessment procedures that we want to make sure, or IEP related things that we want to make sure candidates can do. So we add in some additional items as well. So my role today was really just to pop in with a group of captive audience of potential stakeholders and thinking about, what do you all feel in your experience contributes to successful evaluation. But I would also say, and that can be process oriented, just like what's the process? Like, how are you getting assessments out to the mentor teachers? How are you getting back? How are you using the data? Actionable means, if we find out that lots of students are having a hard time writing lesson objectives, then what are we doing with that data? Are we making a change in our own instruction at the college? So actionable means like doing something about it once we get that information. And so I guess my question is, and this is more I don't know, Pixita, if it's okay to like open it up for verbal feedback from the audience, but asking folks to maybe comment on what they think might be a successful or beneficial process for evaluating student teachers. It can be the process, it can be the content that we should be evaluating them on. Any suggestions like that? And because we have our candidates here, I don't know where they are in their program, maybe they're student teaching. They could even say, you know, gosh, I wish my college supervisor or my mentor teacher would evaluate me on this skill because I think I really excel here, and that never ever shows up on an evaluation. So that kind of feedback is really valuable too. So if anyone has any thoughts, feedback, comments, I'm happy to take a moment and get that now.
So maybe people could put things in the chat, or if you'd like to unmute yourself. I think Sophia, you're earlier in the program, is that right? Or you're a junior?
Yeah, I'm a junior. I'm in, I think it's 311. So I haven't gone into a school yet. I'll be in my first placement going into a school next week. So I don't really know anything about the evaluation process yet and like how it affects me.
Okay, well, thank you for that. You'll be on the lookout though. Is there anything that you're excited to demonstrate for your mentor, teacher, or college faculty member when you're in 311? Wow, maybe on that, I would get some good feedback.
Yeah, right now I'm just a little nervous. I've been in daycare settings, like I've worked in a daycare, but I haven't worked in a school setting like teaching. So I'm not really sure what my strengths are yet, because like I have great plans, but I haven't put it into action. So I'm just kind of excited to like be able to be helpful. Like I feel like that's what I'm good at. Like if someone gives me a task, like I can do it, and so I'm excited to be able to do that. But like I just feel like I don't have the experience yet to know. Like I feel like it's something you have to live through to be able to say, oh, like this is what I know I'm good at, and this is what I want them to see.
But I like your idea of being helpful, or if you give me a task, I can do it. So that to me, that's almost, I don't think we have a disposition listed on our evaluation that really gets it, like, you know, follow through or problem solving. I'll have to go double check and read very closely and see, because that's a really good point, because that is a really awesome skill for a future teacher to have, which is if you're given a directive or asked to go do something, do you take it and run with it? Are you able to follow directions? That's good feedback. Anyone else have thoughts about the process or the actual content?
Jason has posted something in the chat.
Oh,
Jason,
okay.
welcome. Thanks for being here as a student teacher.
Yeah, of course.
Hi, Jason.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So you were talking about, so you're talking about what's going wrong and how to improve on a day-to-day basis. So that's a really interesting point. So like almost formative early on, like, so not waiting till we're done with student teaching and saying, oh, this is how we think you did, but rather almost like progress monitoring that we do in education often which is, you know, those frequent check-ins and frequent feedback. And hopefully you do get that from your mentor and from your supervisor. But as far as a formal tool, we do it usually twice, once at the midpoint, once at the end. But what you're saying, it sounds like, is you'd like that even more frequent.
Yeah, it's very different going from like being at college and, you know, having grades that, you know, as a student you're performing on, and then being switched into a teacher role where now you're doing grading, and it's not always, you know, being told what you're doing right or wrong. It's a very different mindset to be in. And so I'm actually student teaching right now. And so it's very different so far, trying to figure out, you know, how do I know if I'm doing well? How do I know what I need to fix when there's not somebody that's grading something I'm doing currently?
That's really great feedback. Thank you.
Jason, we
Go
have
ahead,
a teacher timeout. So our teachers that are in student teaching can just be like teacher timeout, and they can go and talk with their cooperating teacher. Like, I'm not really sure where I should go next, or like what I should do. And so they anticipate that, and that culture is there of always learning. I also want to just share that you know, the in-task standards are based on like 3 different domains, and one is performances, and that one's always difficult for us. So we as a Bucks team have worked together to identify gaps that we have, and then where we're going to meet them during orientations, during their student teaching, during their field work. And so we've identified family engagement at the secondary level as being one of those gaps. And so now the Bucks team comes in and talks with our candidates at new teacher orientation and during those workshops that I talked about earlier to meet those identified goals. Now, the next step would be, Shannon, is how do we assess that? We've now taught it, and then it's assessed at the very end during, we use the CPAS, the Ohio State. It's very similar to what you just presented here. And that's where it's assessed at that time.
Very good. Thank you. That's exactly what we're supposed to do, right? Is find the gaps and then try to improve on them from a program, because rest assured, student teachers and future student teachers, you know, if there's frequent gaps that we're seeing in candidates, then guess who we have to look at? Not so much what you're doing. It's like, well, what did we maybe not give you the experience yet, or what did we not teach you in an appropriate manner, or have you experience in a frequent manner? And Julie Carter talked about this notion of, in the chat, she mentioned like opportunities to get feedback and then redo things, like reteach. And that's really cool. We've used some simulation technology for that in the past on campus, but it isn't really a ongoing embedded thing, which where you teach avatars, in which case you can mess up, you can reteach, you can stop, you can pause. I like the teacher timeout idea. But all of these are really, really great ideas. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and Shannon, I just wanted to chime in because I like blew through that slide on faculty engagement, but special education program faculty, and I asked our students, when do you get to engage with families? And they said open house, parent-teacher conferences, IEP meetings. And so a whole project evolved connecting education students with social work interns, with nursing students. That was a faculty project that looked to expand those opportunities. And so that involved a STEM project with grandparents raising grandchildren in the community. And one of the things that came out of that was students got to actually see their professors in action, doing the real work with families and students. And then another example of that on that slide is a faculty member in social work is actually mentoring and supervising social work interns as they're now participating in telemental health. So how do we use this mutually beneficial sort of faculty engagement to not only identify the areas that, you know, where we want to expand those student, you know, those clinically rich student experiences, as Andrea was referring to, but how do we work across departments, recognizing that today's student is going to need a, you know, a very comprehensive and multifaceted interprofessional response, and that our students, whether they're education, social work, or nursing, they need to know the whole child. And how do we work together and bring them together pre-professionally as faculty? So anyway, I just had to chime in on that because I sold that a little bit short in my presentation. But I think it connects directly with what you're asking and ways that we can move that and really re-envision teacher education.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody. Yeah, so much for participating in the roundtable. I'm sorry, my Zoom needs to get ready for the next presentation, so I'm going to have to close the conversation, but we really appreciate your time here today, and we will post all of the recordings on the PDS website. So if you didn't get a chance to see another session that you were interested in, those will be available asynchronously. Have a wonderful rest of the day and hope to see you in other sessions.